Welcome back to another episode of Mother Hustlers, the podcast. And today with us, we have Sam, and I'm so excited because today's topic is the first leap from maternity leave to mompreneur. So we're going to be diving into how sometimes becoming a mom can actually be the catalyst for becoming an entrepreneur and starting your own business, and just how Sam went about this journey. So at this moment, I'm going to give Sam an opportunity to introduce herself, and then we'll jump right in.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. My name is Sam or Samantha, whatever you'd like to call me. I'm the founder of Plenty & Co. We are a Toronto-based floral company, although we specialize more in workshops and special events. So private events, weddings, corporate events, more surrounded around kind of bloom-inspired workshops. So flower arrangement workshops, flower pressing. Yeah, so that's us.
Awesome. Now, to jump in, can you take us back to that moment when you actually decided, you know what? Okay, I'm a mom. I want to start my business. What sparked
Yeah,
that
for sure.
decision?
That's a great question. To be honest, I wish I had like this amazing startup story because I think there's so many amazing small businesses that I follow that have these amazing startup stories, right? Like they found a problem and they found a way to fix it, and that's how they
Right.
launched their business.
Hmm.
And to be honest, for me, like I started my own shop because that's where Plenty & Co kind of started, was just like online retail out of a place of like complete like exhaustion from my job and hating it and hating who I was, hating that I didn't have time for my kids
Yeah.
and I was missing out on so much. I was just burnt out and frustrated. And honestly, I was just like, I got to do something because this is not it. And I was working. So I feel like there's like a pre-COVID and a post-COVID now.
Right.
Pre-COVID, I was working 50 plus hours a week. I was still like
Whoa.
on call kind of for the weekends
Oh,
as
man.
well, and just always had to like be on. And it was really tough. Like, honestly, it was really tough just trying to like do all that and also be there for like kids' events and sports things and kids' birthday
Hmm.
parties and concerts at school and like all of those little things. And it was super challenging and exhausting. And, I was just tired of like having to like hustle for somebody else's dream,
Yeah.
because I've always personally worked for honestly amazing women that were entrepreneurs themselves and had their own businesses and they were super successful. And it was amazing. And I learned so much from them. So I don't take that
Hmm.
for granted. But I was just like, I need to do this for myself.
Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
definitely understand that. And I think it's a struggle. Like what you just mentioned is something that so many moms go through. We have our kids, we take our leave, we go back to work, and then it's like, oh my gosh, this isn't really what I hoped for, right? Because you have this precious little baby, and then you're like, I'm in love. I'm in utter
Yeah.
love, and you want to spend as much time with them as possible. You want to be there for all the moments. You want to be able to take it all in. And then you have this job that is taking almost everything out of you, right? Because
Yeah. Yeah.
even if you don't work like excessive hours, you come home, sometimes you're exhausted. You have other responsibilities at home. So it becomes this struggle of like balancing motherhood and career. And it takes that to a whole nother level when that job is requiring 50 plus hours on call on the
Yeah.
weekends and stuff like that. So I can definitely see how even myself and like other moms could relate to that struggle. Now,
Yeah. It's
you
it's super challenging. Yeah.
it is 100%. So you saw that struggle and you're like, I got to do something about it. This isn't it. And you
Yeah.
start
Yeah.
setting up your business. How did you navigate the initial stages of setting up the business while also adjusting to like being a mom and being an entrepreneur?
Yeah. I feel like, to be honest, I kind of had a little bit of an advantage in a sense because it was a COVID business.
Right.
The industry I was working in was the beauty industry, so totally unrelated to what I do now. But that industry, if you remember, like constantly was closed and then open and then closed again. And so I did
Absolutely.
have like a huge chunk of time where I was working from home or just in home and not working. And that really gave me the chance. And I felt like if this is my moment, this is my chance. I'm at home now. I'm not working full time. I'm not working 50 plus hours. I have this time. I'm at home. Let me get this launched. Let me put this together and start it. And so I had that advantage because I think if I was still working, I would say if COVID never happened, I don't know if I would be here, to be honest. Like, I think
Right.
that whole situation really put in perspective what's important for me. And I think for a lot of people, it goes the same. You almost got to take a step back from that previous life and
Right.
saw like, okay, there's something different here, right? Like I'm at home, I'm spending time with my kids, I'm not missing milestones. This, this is a real possibility. And then, of course, so many people work from home for so long and are
Yeah.
still doing that now. And I think we see the benefits from that. Like, I think in that aspect, people are so much happier, right? Like you have
Yeah.
a little bit more freedom, but you still have your career, but you still are able to spend a little bit extra time with your family, which is super important. And so I really felt like this is my chance. I gotta get this launched. And it was definitely tough, but I had that opportunity, which was really nice. And I kind of told myself, let me do this kind of in milestones. And I gave my own milestones. So, milestone one was let me get my business to a point where I can go from full time to part time. And then step two, or
Hmm.
milestone two, let me get it to a point where I can actually leave this part time job and focus on this full time. And that
Hmm.
really helped me with setting those milestones for myself.
I like how you approach that with the milestones because it wasn't the expectation that this was going to happen overnight. It was giving
Yeah.
yourself kind of like realistic goals to work towards. So that's really important. And I'm really curious because you
Yeah.
mentioned that you worked in the beauty industry previously. So what got you
Mhm.
into this industry now? I wonder what the transition was like.
Yeah. So I've been working since I was 16 and I've always worked in the beauty industry. But I've always had a passion for interior design and home decor and florals and gardening and
Hmm.
plants. I've always loved that. I just never pursued it career wise. And then during like lockdowns, myself and I know so many people did this too. It was like, okay, you're stuck at home, you can't go anywhere. And it gave me the chance to like focus on the house, right? Like we got to decorate the house.
Yeah.
I got to buy plants. I need a new plant. And I was like shopping online, buying plants like a crazy person. And I think that whole thing, that whole adventure with that, it just made me realize like how much I love it, how much I love plants, how much I love flowers, reminded me about that. And so it was from there that I decided I want to start an online store and sell all my favorite things. So home decor items and cute planters and plants and
Mm.
flowers. And that's how it all happened. It was because I was personally spending all my money buying all these things online, and I didn't find a store that really had everything. So I was like really into crystals at that time, plants, flowers, home decor, interior design. And so I just kind of wanted to mesh all those things into one shop. And
Yeah.
and then that's what I did. Yeah.
That's awesome. And you know what? It's funny because you said earlier that you didn't have like this big inspirational story about like finding a need, but look, you did find the need because you were somebody who
Well, I
was
guess
shopping for
so.
all of these
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
And you
I'm like,
kind
why
of
am I
was like,
spending my money on everybody else? I could just do this myself?
yeah, that's awesome. I love that
Yeah.
because you know what? COVID, I mean, no matter how we look at it, it wasn't an unfortunate situation. But like when I talk to people more and more, I think so many of us in that isolation, in that time where we just had to like dial back on life, slow down, be quiet, be a little
Yeah.
bit more inwards. I think so many of us came out of it finding new passions and new inspirations and new motivations. And I think that if anything we can take from that experience of COVID is that like our priorities, like what matters, and like the inspirations and the
Yeah.
motivations that we were able to internalize just because life slowed down. And I think it
It's so
really showed
true. Yeah.
us something that we were kind of missing all along, right?
Yeah. Don't you feel
Now,
that like pre-COVID, the whole mindset was like, I gotta hustle, I gotta work hard, which is great. And you're gonna do that if you're an entrepreneur. You're working almost 24/7, but it's different when you're working for yourself versus working for somebody else. But I feel like I myself And I'm sure a lot of people had this mindset pre-COVID. It was like, I gotta hustle, I gotta work hard. And it was almost this like bragging thing, like, oh, I worked 50 hours this week. Oh man, I was
Yeah.
downtown for like 14 hours and da 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 da. And it was like this whole mindset, this whole thing. And then COVID happened and it was like, wait a minute, I don't like that. That's not
Right?
healthy. That's not a healthy mindset to have like, oh, look at me, I've worked 60 hours this week. It's not a bragging right. Like you shouldn't do that, you know? And it really made me take a step back. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so happy you said that because the whole idea of hustle culture that was developed in like maybe like the last 10 years especially because it was like you see all these memes like you have the same 40 hours a day as Beyonce and all these different ones and it's like
Yeah.
yeah, like we all want to achieve something. We all have goals and stuff like that, but at what cost? And I
Yeah.
look at my life that way personally. Like, I'm one of those people that I used to work in the fitness industry at one point, and this was like pre kids, and like I was pulling crazy hours. I'd go to work at like 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'd leave at like 10 o'clock at night. I'd be there on the
Yeah.
weekends. All my friends at that point in time were people that worked for that company. So even when I wasn't at work, I was still at work because I was hanging out with my
Yeah.
coworkers. And then,
Right.
life happens and you start to realize like, and I know like not every business is like this, but you start to realize you're a number, you're a cog in the wheel, right? And that if something
100%. Yeah.
happens, they let you go, you're gone tomorrow. Or
Yeah.
even if like, God forbid, you were to pass away, like your replacement's there tomorrow. So my
Yeah.
mantra has always kind of been after I had that experience that, you know what? I have to prioritize myself and my family in the roles that I take. And I've not always been successful because sometimes you don't have companies that care about you in that way. But I've always tried to voice that, like, you know what? Like these are my hard stops. When
Yeah.
my hours, my contractual hours are done, I'm done. And
Yeah.
obviously, there are exceptions to every rule. You may have to have events, or like there's a busy period where you might have to put in a few extra hours, and that's fine. But I've made it that like my family is a priority, and the status quo is like I work my hours and like I shut down, and I that's my family
Yeah.
time. And I think for a lot of people, like you said, COVID made us realize like how much we were missing and like how much that was
It's
kind of
so
like a
true. Yeah.
detriment to us mentally because I know like mom guilt's real and so many of us were kind of struggling like oh we're not there for all these important moments and then when COVID happened and you were home with your kids as much as they were driving us crazy let's not forget that
Yeah.
there
Online
was certain
schooling was a thing on its own. Yeah.
right but like we were there and we were able to like cherish some moments that we don't normally get and like those priorities shifted right but
Yeah.
speaking of priorities when you obviously you became a mother and you had your career how did you find like your priorities from when you were working for somebody else influenced your priorities with being a mom and like developing your entrepreneur journey did you feel like your priorities shifted was there a change in kind of how you approach things
Yeah, I think so. I think I had, so my last job that I ended up leaving eventually and pursuing my career or my business full time. When I started that job, I already had my older son, he's 10, and then I had my younger son and he's 5 now. I wish I could say at that time that my priorities changed and I was able to take a step back from work. But because things were so expensive, aka daycare for 2 kids, I couldn't do that. Like I just couldn't. I had to still work those 50 hours a week because I needed the money to pay for daycare, which in reality, and again, this goes back to like COVID happening and I'm at home and I'm like, I was literally working to pay for daycare. Like, what's the point, you know?
oh my gosh
It was just so expensive for 2 kids in daycare at that time. I think I was paying like almost close to $3,000 between 2 kids
yep
in full-time daycare. It's insane.
don't
I
get
know
me
it's gone
started
down now, thank God. I know, right? And so that was super challenging. I feel like my priorities changed mostly in the fact that because I'm working for myself, I'm able to make my own schedule. And I can say to myself, you know what? I'm not going to take this job because my son has this, or we've decided we want to go away for 2 days, and I can make that decision. I don't need to ask somebody else, like, hey, can I get this Friday off to do this or that? It's really nice for me to be able to say yes or no. Not all the time. Of course, I need to build my business and I can't be saying no to a bunch of jobs. I'm not at that point yet. I mean, I hope to be one day, but at least I do have a little bit of wiggle room in that sense where I'm able to say, oh, my son has a concert, so I'm going to stop working for 2 hours and go to that. And then I can come home and I can decide, do I want to continue working, or maybe I can't and maybe I won't. That's been really great to be able to make my own decisions, make my own schedule, be there for my kids. Yeah, it's been really nice to be able to do that. I know a lot of people don't have that opportunity in life, and I definitely do not take it for granted because I've 100% been in a place before where I was literally running out of work to go to a parent teacher interview and then still having to go back to close.
Yeah.
And that was like, really, really tough, really stressful, exhausting. It just burns you out not being able to be there for certain little things and constantly having to ask permission for an hour off or time off or a day off or whatever it
Yeah.
is. And so, yeah, I don't take it for granted now. And it was definitely a struggle up to now. Like, I can't say that I was able to turn a few jobs down here and there in the early stages. But I think it's important when you start your company that you know it's going to be a little bit of a rocky road. It's going to be challenging. It's going to be stressful. But if you keep it up and you don't give up and you have a solid plan in place, you will get to a place eventually where you start having more opportunities to do that, you know?
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that entrepreneurship isn't just like this, I have this idea and like everything's rosy. It does come with bumps
Yeah.
in the road. There's a struggle.
Yeah.
And I think what motivates a lot of people when they become entrepreneurs is that the struggle is for yourself. You're not struggling, like
Yes.
you mentioned earlier, to help somebody else achieve their dream. It's your own
Yeah.
dream. And I think having that flexibility, like you mentioned, where like you can you can still run your business, you can still put in all those hours that you need to be successful, but you can prioritize
Yeah.
yourself and your family by working your hours around that. And I think that's where most people feel like maybe I should be an entrepreneur, because I think that's what a lot of us strive for in our career, because we don't always get that flexibility. And it's like you said, like you have to ask for permission to do things, and some of these things
Yeah.
seem so natural to us, right? Like, should I have to ask permission to go pick up my kids? And it
Yeah.
makes you think
Exactly.
about how society is set up, because like when you think of, I'll give you an example. When I worked, like my son was born, my first son, he's 7 about to turn 8, he was born in 2016. And when I was on maternity leave, I took a job. I literally only took like 4 months, and I went and I took this job
Wow.
because it was such an awesome opportunity to like advance my career. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And I took four
Yeah.
months of leave and I started this job.
Wow.
And the job was awesome. But then you start looking at the kind of like the downfalls of being like a mom, having a career and trying to balance parenthood. The daycare
Yeah.
closes at 6. I work to 5. I work downtown. My daycare is beside my house, but in Scarborough. So I have to
Oh
make
my God.
an hour and a half journey from downtown to Scarborough in an hour. How does that work? Right?
Yeah.
And I know some people would look at it and be like, well, the solution is put your child in a daycare downtown. But then the vacancy, the availability, that's not always an option. You have to kind of go where you can fit in. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, anybody who's been a mom in like the last 10 to 15 years knows that daycare availability in the greater Toronto area is almost non existent. So I had to work
Yeah.
with what I was dealt. And then I would have to leave work early so that I can pick up my child. And it was a similar struggle with my hubby. Like he would have to leave early, or he would have to schedule a shift where he finishes earlier so that somebody can pick up the child by 6 o'clock, because our jobs
Yeah.
aren't designed to plan for this.
And this is why it's so hard to work full time, and have a kid. Because if you're on a call with like a client or something or your boss, and then your kid comes down in his boxers asking for you to put his watch on, it
but
it happens.
and that lends itself to a really important point of like, at what point do employers start becoming more human? You know what I mean? Like, I've had
Yes.
the luck, and I say luck because the last two employers that I've had, I've worked from home, and that they've been very family oriented in the sense that, like, hey, if you need to take a few minutes to go pick up your kid, whatever the case may be, your kid's sick, no worries, do what you need to
That's
do.
amazing.
But like, I
Yeah.
realize how privileged I am to have that
Hmm.
opportunity, because there's so many employers who just don't give a damn what's going on in your family
It's
life, and
so
it makes you
true.
wonder.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. I mean, that was my biggest struggle. Not to say that my previous boss wasn't amazing in her own right, and she was. And, at the end of the day, she's running a business, and I get that. But yeah, for me, it was really challenging. Like, first of all, I worked, so my shift was 9 to 7, 5 days a week. And I had to be on call during the weekends as well, just for, scheduling purposes and all of that.
Right.
And so I basically never dropped my kids off at daycare. I literally never picked them up because, of course, daycare closes at 6. So my husband was always the one to do that. Anytime
Mm-hmm.
they were sick, I could never take a day off. Like, it was like
Mm.
impossible. And one of the biggest turning points for me this was just before COVID. My son was really sick, and my husband absolutely could not leave that day because he had a meeting. And so I was the one that had to go get him. And I was told, well, you can't leave. So if you want to go pick him up and bring him here while you work, he can come and sit in one of the rooms,
Wow.
and you'll work. And I did it. I did it at that time. Like, that was like the norm. And I've spoken to other moms, and they're like, oh yeah, yep, I've done that before. I've brought my kid into the office before. And it was like just expected that you could do that. And it's not right. Like, your kid is sick,
Yeah, it isn't.
you need to be home with them. Like, and that was a big turning point for me. I realized at that moment, like, I'm not doing this anymore. And I did
Yeah.
it at that time because I didn't have a choice. But yeah, that it was things like that that constantly kept happening that really made me realize, like, I can't do this. Is not the job for me. I can't do this forever.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. But luckily, you were able to kind of take that as motivation and inspiration
Yes.
to kind of create your own business and have that flexibility for yourself, and your family, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So now that you're running your business and you think back to like starting it, the journey, is there any particular triumph or like breakthrough moment that your business had that just felt especially rewarding after all the work that you've put in?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, being able to tell myself I'm ready to go from full time to part time was amazing. Such a great feeling to do that. And certainly helped me get my business to like that next level. Being able to leave that job, absolutely a huge triumph for me for sure. And all the little things, like when you start an online store, I'm sure any entrepreneur knows this feeling. When you start an online store, or you start selling something, whether you make it or you're reselling something, your first sale is always so exciting, even if it's just a friend or family member, that first sale, like you packing that
Right.
order and shipping it out is so exciting. So I remember like like those feelings at the very beginning, getting your first customer that you don't know. They've like come across your Instagram or your website and they've purchased something from you is such a huge, huge thing too. And then of course, like as my business progressed, doing my first wedding was very scary, but it was very successful. So that was awesome. Working with one of my dream companies, Pinterest, I did an event for them. They hired me twice
Oh, that's
actually
awesome.
for two events. Yeah. So
Wow,
that was, I'm sure for
congratulations.
them, they're kind of, thank you. I'm sure for them, they're probably like, oh, another event, another team building thing, whatever. Let's hire somebody. But for me, I was like, oh my God, like I get to go
I
to
can
Pinterest head
imagine.
office and do, and like show them my Bloom bar. That's what they hired me for. That was like so big for me. Working with a designer.
Listen,
Yeah.
I can
With a
only
designer
imagine.
in Toronto. Yeah. Yeah. That was like a big, when you get to like, it was definitely one of my dreams. Like, I love Pinterest. And so for them to send me
Well,
an
that's what I
email, I'm
was
like, is
about to
this
say.
real? Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
imagine, because I was about to say that must have been major for you, because based on some of the things that you've listed as your interests, being like interior decor, planting, etc., I'm like, you must be a Pinterest girly. I'm one myself.
Yes.
So that
Yeah.
must have been like, woo, you know? So like
Yeah.
super
Yeah.
congratulations. That it must
Thank
I can
you.
only imagine how rewarding that felt.
Yeah, that was awesome. Like I remember when I got that email with their inquiry, I'm like, this isn't real. This is a scam. Like, this is not a real person from Pinterest. But it ended up being real. And so that was really nice. And then I got to work with a designer here in Toronto, and she's like a pretty big designer too. And she hired me to make a custom like floral piece for a business that she was redoing. And that was so big for me too, because like I mentioned, I really love interior design and that whole world. And so that
Yeah.
was amazing. And it went really well and it was beautiful. And yeah, so those are like my most recent bigger kind of triumphs. But definitely when you start a small business, and this goes to anyone that is thinking of starting or you've just started, all of those little things make a big, big impact too. So your first order, your first big order, your first Google review, all of those things are super exciting.
That's amazing. So we've kind of addressed the highs of entrepreneurship. Now I'm going to kind of
Yeah.
address kind of the flip side of that. How did you manage feelings of doubt or overwhelm, especially in the early days when you're juggling this new venture and motherhood
hmm
amidst a pandemic?
Yeah. Honestly, I feel like I started at a good time because everyone was shopping online. And I knew that there was a need for like a really cute online store that was selling affordable home decor items and plants and flowers. And so that really got me, a step up, I would say at the very beginning. But like, I mean, I have feelings of doubt every day almost. But I think the thing that gets me through it is remembering why I started this
Mhm.
business, thinking about where I want it to be and how I'm going to be able to achieve that. And that just motivates me and kind of brings me back to like, okay, it's hard right now, but I know I can get through this. I've gotten through so many other challenges and everything was fine. It always works out. I always say that it always works out because it does. I think if you stay
Right.
positive and you put kind of positivity out there, it will come back to you. And yeah, I basically always remember why I started. And I think to myself, okay, if I'm going to quit this right now, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to go back to a 9 to 5. I'm going to lose my freedom. I'm going to and I shouldn't say that. I mean, people have 9 to 5 jobs and they're absolutely amazing and they love them and they
Right.
have freedom. It's just for me the last job I was at, that wasn't really the case. And so
Yeah.
that kind of scares me. And I'm like, okay, I can't go back to that. And that's definitely my motivation.
Absolutely. I definitely understand that. It makes complete sense. It's like it's that thing in you that keeps the fire burning, keeps you going because you know where you come
Yeah.
from and like where you want to
Yes.
be or where you want to maintain and what you got to do to stay there.
Yeah.
Now, are there any lessons that you learned along the way that you think are really important that you'd want to share with anybody else who might be thinking of becoming an entrepreneur while being a parent?
Yeah, I mean, oh my gosh, so many. I would say number one is if you want to start your own business, make sure you have a plan in place. I did not have a plan in place, like a solid business plan. Don't just jump into it. Unfortunately for me, I'm the type of person, once I get an idea in my head, I like want to do it immediately. And I don't
Yeah.
take the time to sit down and like put a plan together and write it out and come up with a budget and all of these things. Like I don't do that. I'm better now at it because I know that it's super important. So I would say if you really want to start a business and you're starting this business so that you can get to a point where this is your full-time job and you want to get it to like a pretty big kind of point, I would say before you begin, before you put it out in the world, like don't go and make an Instagram account first. Don't make a website first. Sit down, put a solid business plan together. If you can afford to hire somebody to help you with that, even better.
Absolutely.
Invest in that. It's going to really start your business out in a really great place by doing that. It's not the fun part of it,
Hmm.
but it's definitely super, super important. Yeah, just have a business plan in place. Really think about what your logo is. If you can hire a professional to make your logo, also a really good investment. I know for me, I think I've changed my logo like 10 times. I created them myself
Mm,
up until my very last
right.
one. My one now, I hired a professional to create it for me. What a difference. So if you can invest in that, please do that first. Like get your theme colors. What is your brand's messaging? What do you want to focus on? What is your budget? How much is this going to cost you? Like you need to have a solid business plan in place. So I would say that's like lesson number one, because I certainly did not do that. And I probably wasted a lot of money
Right.
because of that. You know, if you're starting an online store and your thing is like shipping out, really taking into consideration shipping costs because it is very expensive. And remember to put that
Yeah.
into your cost of your product. Also, stay super organized. So if you're shipping things out, either courier or like Canada Post, for example, make sure you have your supplies, your boxes, your bags, your tissue, your labels, all of those things. Because I've definitely come across many times where I'm like, I got to ship this order out and I don't have boxes, I don't have bags, I need to get tissue paper, I've run out of
Right.
labels,
Being prepared.
and it makes it very frustrating and it's very tiring. And yeah, just honestly being organized and all of these little things that don't sound very exciting are super important for your business. Your packaging, your branding are so important, you know?
Yeah,
It's what's going to set you out. It's what's going to set you apart from your competition,
it
you
really
know?
does.
It really, really makes a big difference. So yeah, I would say that's like my two biggest lessons because I didn't do that. I definitely did not do that. And I'm now at a place where I'm like, I know how important it is because I struggled for a long time.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's so important because I think of many of us, myself included, I've done the entrepreneurship thing a time or two, and like we get these
Hmm.
ideas and we jump in feet first, and we don't
Yeah.
always look at the bigger picture and all the little things that might add up, or the
Hmm.
little things that might make a difference and help to make your business stand out or more successful. So that was really great advice because even as a consumer, some of the things you mentioned, like the packaging and getting and having your stuff in nicely packaged with a coherent theme and consistency, it
And
makes
message,
it, when
yeah.
you receive it, it's so beautiful, and you're so appreciative of this beautiful package that you got that seems like, oh, somebody put so much time and thought and genuine effort and
Yes.
sincerity into it. So I think that was
Yes.
really good
Yep.
advice because I know I'm one of those people that get those packages and I'm like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. I don't want to throw it out.
Same, same. I'm like, oh my gosh, this bag is so cute. I just bought something and the bag was so beautiful. I've kept it. I don't need it,
Yes.
but it's just such a nice bag. And it just made the whole experience so much nicer. It's true. It's
and
those little things
and
that do make a big difference.
and those are the things that make people remember your brand as well, right? That kind of like gets it ingrained into their brain. Like, I love this brand because of this. And
Yes,
the product's amazing
yes,
on top of that. So it's like those little things are important to note. Now, when you think
yeah,
about your
totally.
business, starting that, balancing motherhood, what role would you say your support system played in allowing you to kind of grow and be successful in that, right?
Yeah, I mean, having a support system is honestly number one. I would say, first of all, like my husband has been absolutely amazing. He supported me from the very beginning. He's literally helped me with
That's
events
awesome.
many, many,
Aw.
many times. And
I love it.
I couldn't have done those events, you know, without him. And yeah, so it's just super important to have a really strong support system. Having friends and family support you, not only with helping out with your kids, but supporting you in what you want to do. And I know all of my friends and my family like purchasing from me and giving me their honest feedback and things like that just make such a big difference. Any new kind of product launch or anything that I do, they're the first to try it. And so having people like that there to really give you their honest opinion and support you in your business and, you know, purchase from you and recommend your product to others, help you with events and all of that, just super, super
Hmm.
important. Yeah.
That's so important. And I think that's one of the conversations that has kind of run through every episode of this show thus far about how important a support system is for motherhood and career and just balancing everything. So I'm happy that you have that, and that has allowed you to propel, even further, and allowed you to achieve your dream. Now, looking back,
Hmm.
how has this journey of becoming a mompreneur shaped you, and what does the future hold for you and your business? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. How has it shaped me? I think it's made me really realize what my passions are and allowed me to really focus on those things, which just
Hmm.
genuinely brings more happiness to me every day, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Looking back at the person I was when I was working full time, I was working in an industry that I did used to love, don't get me wrong, but I definitely grew out of that. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's just made me a happier person, more relaxed person. I love that I have so much more time with my kids and I'm so much more involved in all of their things. That has been a huge achievement for me because that was really what motivated me to start my company in the first place.
Right.
And yeah, so those are the most important things for me. What's in store for Plenty Co? I feel like I've kind of let the company kind of go very organically. I haven't, like I said, I never really had a solid business plan to begin with. I do have one
Right.
now, though. I really do have one now, but I didn't have one in the beginning.
That's good.
And I feel like all the growth that I have now is because I have a plan in place and know where I want to be and what I want to focus on. You know, somebody told me, somebody that I really do admire said to me, like, Sam, you can't do it all. You know, you can't, as much as you want to, you
Yep.
can't. And it's so true. I would say, like, now that I have a solid plan in place and I know that, yes, you cannot do it all, I've really been able to take a step back and say, okay, what is the one thing I really want to focus on in my business? Let me do it and let me do it really, really, really well. And let me get rid of all this other stuff that maybe I don't really love, or maybe I'm not doing a very good job at it, you know? And yeah, so that's really like propelled my company into doing more events and working with designers and doing more custom pieces and doing my workshops. So that's what I would
Yeah.
say is our focus. I want to really be that florist that's known for amazing workshops and amazing events, like our Bloom Bar. It's such a popular thing and it's honestly so much fun and it just honestly brings so much happiness to people's lives when I know that sounds kind of cliche, but
That's awesome.
I think for anybody that loves flowers, I mean, some people don't love flowers, but for anybody that loves flowers and you go to an event and you're given a bouquet or you're given the chance to actually play with flowers and make your own arrangement, it's so much fun.
Yeah.
And it's so much fun for me to share that with the world. And it's so much fun for everybody else that loves flowers. So I really hope to just really focus on that and continue to do that and get really busy doing it too.
That's amazing. And you know, one thing that I took away from your response, and to kind of wrap it up nicely, is that I think your transition in terms of your career to an entrepreneur, it made you happier. And like the mantra is kind of
Hmm.
like happy life, happy wife. But I think that also equals happy
Totally.
mom. I think if as mothers, if we're
Yeah.
happy, if we're happy about everything, every aspect of our life, career, relationship, etc., we become so much more positive than we already are. Because even when we're kind of like down, we still emit this like to our kids, right? Because we have to.
Yeah.
But when you can feel
Yeah.
happy in every like pillar of your life, that happiness just like oozes out of you and just like rains onto your kids in in the best way
It's
possible.
true.
So I'm so happy that
Yeah.
you were able to take that leap. You were able to kind of chase your passion, achieve your dreams, and now you feel so much more happy and fulfilled in your life. I'm so happy for you, and I'm so glad that you were able to join me today and share your story and give us some tips, some tricks, you know, let us know how you got there, because I think your story can inspire a lot of moms out there who are kind of like on the fence, thinking and maybe even doubting themselves as this may not be something that I can do, but seeing that
Yeah.
somebody else out there took a leap, you know, for better or for worse, because like you said, it's not always going to be perfect. There's going to be bumps in the road, and you were able to get to this place where like you're happy with what you're doing. I hope that inspires somebody who watches this.
Yeah, I honestly, I hope so too. And I'm really happy that you had me on. Thank you so much. This is my first podcast ever. So super exciting for me too. And I'd say to anybody that's watching that is thinking of starting their own company and they haven't, they're really at the very beginning of it, or maybe they're halfway through, or whatever the case may be, and they're a mom and they have questions, I'd be more than happy to speak to them. So you can always send me a message on our Instagram. It's plantita_co. because it's so important to support others, especially other women, especially other moms, because
Amazing.
I feel like as a person, when you're happy, when you're taking care of yourself, you're able to do that for others, right? So your kids. So yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much.